Starting my speech in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, adversity is good and great, but it can only take you so far. The objective lens of learning, regardless if you're in law, you're in medicine, or you're in business, is the overruling and really important foundation to give you a capacity to succeed. That is to say, even if I am so hardworking, even if I am so disenfranchised from a particular background, what does that have to do with me having to learn the objective things that are going to dictate whether I succeed or not in that particular institution? Opening government was very noble in terms of their intention to be able to help people, but did not engage to the material that Jaron told you and failed to respond to a very simple question. Why do we have things like financial merit scholarships and grants that already seek to give the most disenfranchised a capacity and slot? We think all of these diversity, equity, and inclusion, woke stuff are important and good, but it should not be the sole metric which we use to accept people into our institution, for the reasons that Jaron already told you. Before I move on to my case, a couple of responses against the previous speaker. Number one, they said that adversity is important and really good. But we think we have to understand, in status quo right now, we already do take into account adversity. Things like interviews for scholarships, things like the processes in the admissions office to be able to appeal your score and explain your situation, already allow these marginalized individuals to explain their situation and be able to get access. The nuance here is that UP, the largest and most prestigious state university and college here in our country, is actually free and beholden to the country and the taxpayers. That is to say, we can't just pander to who is oppressed more, because these very people need to be trained and molded to be the future leaders of tomorrow, because they're not paying for an education, and every centavo that we give has to go to the best who have the most capacity. Last time I checked, UP sure has some privileged individuals who can afford it and are from political elites, but the far majority of people are those who can't afford it. If you just vibe check how UP works in status quo, you're going to see how all of the harms that opening government posits are actually solved in the status quo when you have a meritocratic set of outcomes. Why, right? It's because of the thing they said about breaking the cycle. We don't break the cycle. You reinforce a sense of delusion. When you create this illusion of effectiveness that, I got in kasi I came from this background, that's what leads people to actually become entitled and actually think that they deserve it at the expense of someone who might be not as marginalized or disenfranchised, but deserved it more because they have more capacity to be able to succeed. Other responses will be integrated. What is my extension? I am going to defend our counterfactual, which is status quo, and I'm going to do a comparative between the adversity world when it becomes the metric or the status quo counterfactual. We need to understand UPCAT as a standardized exam in status quo takes a look at language proficiency, reading comprehension, math, and science. And these are actually aligned with international metrics like the GMAT for grad school or the SAT in the US. That's why what the previous speaker said was a lie. It's not true, right? Meaning in the US, they have an adversity score, yeah, but it's not an overriding metric to determine whether you get into school or not. They have the SAT. And the common denominator among all of these exams that you have around the world is that these actually are the most fair, objective, and meritocratic outcome, because even if you are poor, even if you are marginalized, you create an incentive structure to cut across all of that subjectivity and actually work hard. That is actually why the farmer's son who was able to go into UP and is now able to graduate and get a job is actually such an example for people, because you no longer just characterize your circumstance, but you now have to be able to work hard. Why is working hard important? Because we recognize that the point of school is to be able to help those who are not as smart or not as capable, but we also have to understand the capacity to succeed. Meaning, if you can't read or you can't write, you eventually set yourself up for failure if you're gonna get kicked out by a terror prof, or you're not gonna be able to meet the GPA requirement to be able to stay in the university. Which is why, at best on opening government, you accept all of these people, but you set them up for failure in the medium to long run, the point in which they're not able to even learn, and they become even more frustrated in themselves and their own situation. What happens inside government is you create a perverse incentive structure that harms the capacity for people to be able to succeed. Here are a couple of certain impacts you get. The first is, you stifle discourse, you polarize the UP system, and you radicalize them even more. At the point in which the common denominator of you getting accepted is the extent of your disenfranchisement. We think that's harmful and can lead to a sense of even more radicalization and a sense of entitlement. The second here is you lack on the capacity to be able to compete as an institution, which leads to brain drain. Meaning other universities like the ALU schools or even Ivy Leagues abroad are now going to be able to get the best talent because of what happens on government world, wherein you cherry pick people on the sole basis of their disenfranchisement. What that does is it harms our country and the institution in the long run and sets us up at the point in which we're going to fail. What have we talked to you so far on our side? We talked to you ultimately about how, if you take a look at status quo, UP is in a really good position because of the farmer's son who I mentioned. And if you take a look at the Filipino middle class, they're significantly much better off right now compared to where we were a decade ago. And that is a testament that the UP system is actually working and actually being able to create a meritocratic incentive structure that actually helps people and motivates people, most importantly, to be able to succeed and not just have to clamor or pander to their circumstances. For all of these reasons, we are very proud to oppose.